This is the opportunity for our kid to have some diversity in their lives, no matter what their background was, whether if they was black, white, wherever. But we know that the majority of the communities here in Marin County are overwhelmingly white, and so are their schools.
For the Marin Council of Chambers, I'm Stephanie Plant, and this is We Are One Marin. Paul Austin has heard this refrain from many parents as the founder and head coach of Play Marin in Marin City. It's one of the reasons his program grew from one basketball team of 9 players to 12 separate teams full of kids from his neighborhood and all over the county. When we met, he led us in some drills not only on diversity and inclusion, but we also talked about his coaching philosophy and how the lessons he teaches his players on the court translate to lessons for life. Stay tuned for the first in a 3-part special this month dedicated to Marin City's 80th anniversary. Today, Play Marin. Coming up in the next episodes, other influential leaders who continue to impact so many of our county's young people. Here's another window into how Marin works. Let's welcome Paul Austin. Paul, why don't you start, if you would, telling us a little bit about Play Marin?
Absolutely. So Play Marin is a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We're based out of Marin City. I started Play Marin. My main reason was when I looked at the landscape, especially in Marin City, I wanted them to have the same opportunities. So I like to look at it from a standpoint of what I call closing the activity gap. I worked at quite a few schools here in Marin County, about 4 or 5 of them, over a 6-year period of time. And it was quite, an eye-opener of seeing how affluent areas, especially the kids in the school, their schedule was packed right after school. They're doing chess club, they're going sailing or kayaking. They belong to a mountain bike group, and then plus all the organized youth sports that they had available to them. And I was like, I need to do something about that. And therefore, Play Marin started. But I simply did start really to serve kids in Marin City. But then what I also found out is parents throughout the county started coming down to Marin City, bringing their kid to participate in our program. And I started asking parents, like, hey, why do you bypass either San Rafael, San Anselmo, Tiburon, or wherever to come here and participate with us? And they were very honest and said, hey, this is the opportunity for our kid to have some diversity in their lives, no matter what their background was, whether if they was black, white, wherever. But we know that the majority of the communities here in Marin County are overwhelmingly white, and so are their schools.
Right.
And so, if we could provide this culture and this opportunity for diversity in an extracurricular activity way, well, that's something that we honed in on and we do, fairly well.
And what a teaching opportunity for you as a role model.
True.
I don't have to tell you about the lessons, right? From sport. You could probably tell us what sports gave you as a teenager.
Well, absolutely, right? It's the character development that you get out of youth sports, time management. I even tell people anger management.
Absolutely.
Right? You got to learn how to take orders from other people and advice. And so the discipline piece is a huge component of it. You being able to show up for your friends and your teammates, also be able to develop what I call true leadership skills, right? And that's what you really get out of sports, because it gives you an opportunity to understand how to socialize with other folks, how to listen, right? Because the umpires and the referees, you may not always get the call that you want.
Agree.
But you have to be resilient, right? Like, you can't break down, have a fit, fall out on the floor. No, you got to be like, okay, next play. Let me keep going, right? And you learn how to lose. That's one of the bigger things in life that some people overlook, is understanding how to lose, right? But then also understanding, hey, if I keep on working at it, I'm going to get better. Whatever it is that their goal is that they set. So goal settings, if we're going to go into the season, what are we going to do to win the championship? How are we going to get there? All right, it's going to require for everybody to show up to practice every day. It's going to require one on your off days for you to be out there shooting in the backyard. Like, all of these simple tools that we teach through sports. But then for me, it's also like, all right, I'm glad that you're playing against this kid, but do you know his name? Do you know what school he go to? What is, like, take the opportunity before and after games to build a relationship with other kids.
Yes.
Right.
Right? Because you're going to see me doing it with other coaches. You know, because you're going to see each other. You know, at some point in time, you might be playing with each other, right? Like, you might go to TAM, you might be on the same team. You might end up at one of the private schools, either in Marin or San Francisco, and you guys might join forces then, but get to know each other now, right? Which is a huge component. And then also just that to create a platform for kids to be social, right? Like, we kind of forget how sports allow kids that social aspect and figuring out who they are.
Well, it's a built-in social network.
Yes.
It's somehow slightly like I shouldn't give up all my parenting secrets, but chosen by the parent in a way, directed by the parent.
Yes, and your expectation is your coach is going to create a healthy environment.
Yes.
Right? Like, even if you have a dispute with somebody, the coach is going to pull you guys together. And, hey, man, y'all on the team. Like, y'all got to be able to support one another. And what does that support look like? Whether if it's on the court or off the court. So these are all lessons that I'm trying to tell kids now, because I understand I may not be able to affect the educational system the way that I want to, but to be able for kids to hold each other accountable affects their education outlook. Because once you get to high school, you got to have, a 2.5 or whatever to play on the team. So that means you got to be going to class, you got to be doing your work. For me, I'm always telling students, hey, you need to, if he's on your team, then you need to encourage him to go to tutoring after school. Right? Like we can't afford not to have him, you know? And so it's that accountability that comes into place also, and also teach kids how to advocate for themselves. Right? Like, that's almost an art that we don't talk about enough, is being able to say, hey, I need you to be able to stand up and come and share. I tell kids, come share with me your feelings. Tell me what's going on. Because the expectation is when you get into certain, either in school with a teacher, or you might get into a conflict with somebody outside, is how are you going to deal with that, right? You don't want to just shut down. You want to be able to speak your truth and stand up for who you are and be comfortable in that.
Absolutely.
And that's a foundation that we want to build in our youth going forward.
100%.
For life skills. Tell us a little bit, if you would. I happen to know you went to Tam High, but you grew up in Marin City. Is that right?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Marin City. I'm 46 years old now, but I consider myself a third-generation Marin Cityite. That means my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, migrated from the South to come work in the shipyards. The historic aspect of Marin City often get overlooked, especially from the contributions that we gave or we did for not only Marin County, but for the United States, right? Like, Marin City was birthed out of World War II.
Right.
It housed everybody, no matter what color you was, that all lived in Marin City, and then they worked in the shipyards a mile or two away in Sausalito.
Right.
But when the war ended, you know, black people, we were redlined right here to Marin City. We were not able to move throughout the county. And so I have a whole lot of feelings about that. Also, especially as I gotten older, been digging into how systematic racism has continuously oppressed our community here in Marin City. And so, yes, those are just multiple layers, but I am glad because it did provide me a level of understanding, not only about myself, because our community was so tight, being able to be raised in what was considered a black community, even though we was in Marin County, which is overwhelmingly white, was really special because I knew my neighbors. Right? My neighbors knew me. We had a bunch of programs that poured into my life. You know, we had Operation Give a Damn, which was a big brother, big sister program. My mother, who's a continuously activist today, Terry Harris Green, ran Step 2 educational vocational program that really helped us with our educational needs. So tutoring every day after school, going on college tours throughout the South to HBCUs, just being able to open up your mind was one of the wonderful things about it. And then I grew up as what I consider a recreational kid. So I played sports all my life, football, basketball, and baseball. Really enjoyed it. And then we had summer programs that was offered to you. You had the Marin City Rec Center where you went, you hung out with your friends. I didn't grow up in an era where video games were the major thing.
Isn't that nice?
I know, right? It's like totally different now. That's all my son do.
I have a son that likes that too.
Right? It's like everything changes.
Yes.
But I was a big fan of just being out and playing and just running the streets with my friends. So went to TAM, played football and basketball at TAM. And at that time in the 90s, because I graduated in 94, in the 80s, the landscape at Tamalpais High School for sports, at least for basketball and football, was the majority was kids of color, right? And you saw it on the court, you saw it in all the photos, you saw it plastered all over Tam High School. And so, I went to school in Houston, lived there for like 10 years or so, really enjoyed my time. I went to Texas Southern University at HBCU, studied early childhood education, ran after school programs, got into real estate. But what happened in 2008, 2009?
Crash.
The crash. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do?
Tough times.
Yes, it was tough. But what it did, it gave me an opportunity, because I had a young daughter at the time, to bring my daughter to come visit for like 2 years. Like, we just going to go back to Marin. We're going to visit family during the summers. And I'm going to run recreation programs for them. It was like, I got a little daughter, I got family. And then at the same time, Jonathan Logan, he had just finished school. He was the interim general manager for the Marin City Community Service District. And he essentially convinced me to come and stay. He was like, Paul, they want me to take this position, but I need a recreational director. Would you be willing to do that? And I was like, I don't know. I really enjoy Houston. But at the same time, my money wasn't the same way that I wanted it to be. So it's like, all right, I'll come back. And so then I ran the recreation center for about 6 years. And then I stepped away, worked with Bridge the Gap College Prep, did some college access work. I worked in a few schools. And at that same time, when I did leave around 2012 from the recreation center, I had 2 teams, or basically 2 programs that I didn't want to see die, kind of 3. One was we just started basketball, so I had like 1 or 2 teams, and I was like, these are my teams. I created them. I'm gonna make sure that we keep on doing that. But of course, in Great Marin, you get some rumblings like, hey, they don't belong to a Catholic youth organization. And I was like, I live in Marin City. We don't have no Catholic churches. We got Baptist and Kojic and everything else.
Right.
But I had a volunteer parent. He just came on over. We super close now. His name is Randy Raven. And Randy's super intelligent businessman. He's like, Paul, I'm going to take this off your shoulders. I'll go out and find us a Catholic organization to support us. And he did. He found St. Mary's Star to Sea.
In Sausalito.
Sausalito. At the time, they just transferred out Father Mike. I love Father Mike to death.
Oh, yeah.
He's just such a big, cuddly guy, warm heart, right? And he was so juiced and so excited when the opportunity came to them. And they was like, no problem. It's your organization. We are just here to help support, however that may look. And what they did, they stepped up and they was like, hey, we'll pay the league fees. And that's all they wanted. But then they'd be like, hey, come to church. We got donuts for the kids. And he shows up to some of the games. He used to show up to the games and be like a huge fan, because we came in at a time not realizing that it was going to be a little bit of controversy. Because we were a new program, but then we was also a program that was black and brown, right? Like, you saw the color in our program. And while yet, we would think that we kind of are past some of our racial issues, we not, because they occur in different ways. And we saw it play out sometimes in the stands with, some of our competitor parents having negative comments to say.
Wow.
But we just stayed fast, right? And so we just built a program. We average about 12 teams, boys and girls.
It started in 2012 officially.
So officially, we started in 2019. So we got our 501(c)(3) in 2019.
Okay.
But I did start in 2012, just doing programs, all volunteer based. So myself and all of my coaches were all volunteers. But then, I just wanted to step out on faith because I had this pretty well running, sports based organization that wasn't official. And I was like, I was nervous about it, right? Because it is doing something. It's getting out of your comfort zone. Everything then was going to be on my shoulders, if Play Marin was going to continue to rise or was I going to let it crumble. So in 2019, really 2020, I went full time. I was like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is what I'm going to do with my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're up to 12 teams.
12 teams just in CYO, right?
And then you have other teams too?
Yeah, so we usually do like a kindergarten.
Kindergarten basketball, that just makes me smile just to think about it.
We got to make sure the young ones get going.
Awesome. I mean, my daughter swam for a long time, and her coach always says I'd rather start them young, right? I can teach new skills. I can't break
Bad skills.
bad habits. Yeah.
Break bad habits.
Yeah.
So we look at the K1 too, make sure that they start working on their skills early on. And then I partner with my guy, Jomar Butler, who ran the County Bears, and we also do AAU basketball, travel basketball. But we want to make sure that now that we have a bunch of kids at the high school level, that we continue to make sure that they have the same opportunities. And club sports is one of those that
It's very expensive.
it's extremely expensive.
So providing those opportunities without the costs, I assume, or with a subsidized cost if you can, or donations, or
As much as we can, we try and do it at no cost, right? But that's where the rest of what I say, Marin donors, I need y'all to reach out.
Okay.
We can't do this without the funding, and so it is, and it is important. I try and help folks realize, like, you'll pay $1,000 for your kid. If you have that extra $1,000, pay it for another kid.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the model that Play Marin has been built on, because we do serve a community where the median income is $40,000. And, that would be a huge burden for me to ask a parent to pay $1,000 to play club sports. And so, we are constantly looking to raise money. I tell people all the time, I'm getting better at it,
it's hard.
but I'm not a natural fundraiser. Because to be honest, my mom has always been a nonprofit, and I've seen how much she gave of herself financially and emotionally. I just was like, I want to stay away from it. But then I realized that there is an opportunity for me to continue to give back into other people's lives so they can gain. That's the most overarching, beautiful piece about it. And so what I try and let people know, like, this is a business, right? This is a business, but it is going to require other people's funding source.
Support.
And their support, right? Whatever that looks like. So I'm always reminding folks, hey, give how you see please. Whether if it's of your time, whether if it's of your funding or your experience.
What do they call that? Time, talent, and treasure?
Time, talent, and treasure. I like that.
I didn't make it up, so you can have it.
Well, I know use that one often.
Absolutely.
Time, talent, and treasure, right? And be able to pay it forward. I mean, we live in arguably the richest county in California. We go back and forth between us and Orange County, which means we're one of the richest counties in the country. So the surplus of economic freedom is here for people to pay it forward.
Right.
I'm sure fundraising is hard and asking for money is hard, but you have a microphone in front of you, so go.
True.
Yeah.
So here we
Pitch
go,
it.
right? Like, reach out to me. I'm Paul Austin with Play Marin. Open up those pocketbooks anytime you want to. Write us a check. Send it over to us. However you see willing and able to do. I am here to meet with you, talk to you about it, and thank you for your services at any given point in time.
That is excellent. You're getting good at that.
Yeah, that felt natural.
I'm not going to before we let you go, however, I do want to go back to Marin City,
Yes.
because Marin City 80 is happening all year. I
Absolutely.
believe a lot of celebrations coming up in September.
Yes.
And I just wondered if Play Marin is participating in that at all, or how you might be participating.
Yes, I mean, we're always a partner at the table, pretty much with all of the organizations in Marin City. So I will be partnering with Felicia, who's heading up the Marin City 80s. She's such a wonderful historian in her own right. And so, yes, people they always come to me like, Paul, we need X, Y, and Z. Can you show up? Can we do some youth stuff? And so, yes, I'm going to be involved. Today I didn't wear it, but I even got some sweatshirts that says Marin City is Black History, established 1942.
Love that.
I've been also going around I've been to about 4 or 5 different schools here in Marin to talk about Marin City from a historic standpoint and, talk about my story, which is a story within itself. So it's an opportunity for people to learn also about the deep history of Marin City. And what I find is very, very few adults really know here in Marin County themselves about Marin City and what we have contribute, and also how we've been affected through redlining. But it is our celebration of our community. And so I'm excited. I love a good celebration all the time. So people, show up, come out, be part of everything that we do, because I do miss what I consider some of the old days growing up, having a flea market in Marin City, right? Being able to go down.
I remember.
Get me a big old corn dog or an egg roll.
I'm sure there's
shopping.
There's so many people who wouldn't know, right? That you go to what is Target, and there's a CVS there, or whatever else used to be there. There used to be a video store in that mall too.
Yeah.
That was the flea market.
That was the flea market, and I'm always trying to think outside the box, right? Because the flea market was something that paid forward back into organizations. It was an economic resource for our community, right? So I think about back then, they were saying $500,000 to $700,000 used to go back into the community. It gave people jobs, the whole nine.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the redevelopment that happened in the mid 90s, late 90s, did not pay dividends back into our community.
Yeah.
I.e., we don't own the land anymore.
Right.
Right. So, thinking outside of the box and trying to get people on board around what I call let's get the property back and turn it into a community land trust. So then we can have our own economic arm that could feed back into our local government that can help us be a sustainable, hopefully in the future, a sustainable city, because we're in the incorporated area currently of Marin, but we still need to figure out how do we create a revenue source to feed our community like it used to happen back in the past.
Absolutely.
And then what's the out-of-the-box idea look like for next steps for Play Marin?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, next steps for Play Marin is
Nice one.
I want Marin City to be known for youth sports, right? So one thing that we're working on currently is working with the school district to repair the old baseball field that's been there, so we can have an actual playing field, because currently we don't have a playing field. So it's hard for me to say I really want to start a lacrosse program or a soccer program or a flag football program without a field. So that's one. The other one is I want to build a facility with like 3 courts in it. So those are my 2 things that I want, because I know people will come if they bring in their children.
That's right.
Right? Marin County do not have enough facilities as is.
I mean, you guys have been having night games since I was in high school at the rec.
Midnight basketball. Everybody love it, right? And just imagine if we could do that on a bigger platform.
Absolutely.
And what that could mean for the county, and especially Marin City. Like, it would create jobs, number one, but then also it would bring folks in. I want to throw big tournaments, like, because I go everywhere currently with my kids, and we go to these gyms that got 3 courts or 4 courts in it, and I'm sitting back and I'm like, oh my goodness, they charging $10 for every adult that come in, plus $10 for parking, plus you paying like $350 as a team to come play in this tournament. So I'm just thinking from an economic standpoint, what a facility like that can do for a community. Because once they come in, you're there
Yes.
all day.
Oh, yes.
So you're going to spend your money in the area. You got to go you got to eat. So that's my overarching plan.
Okay.
And I believe the more and more I put it out there in the atmosphere, that it will happen.
Marin City Sports Complex.
Marin City Sports Complex, powered by Play Marin.
There you
Oh,
go.
that sounds perfect.
But we are growing. We're getting ready for summer programming. We now serve over 400 plus students or kids a year. So we've been growing.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Paul. We appreciate your time.
Hey, anytime. And I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you guys providing this platform for me to come and tell our story. So, yes, thank you. We are One Marin.
Thank you.
We are. Talk to you soon. You can reach Paul Austin and his sports programs at playmarin.org. That's playmarin.org. Stay tuned for more features celebrating the 80th anniversary of Marin City in our next 2 episodes. If you want to join the conversation or make suggestions, reach us at weareonemarin@gmail.com. The Marin Community Foundation generously sponsors this podcast. Our theme music is performed by a student at Enriching Lives Through Music. Elm is in San Rafael's Canal neighborhood. Finally, a reminder to support diverse local businesses and shop Marin.